pre-existing conditions. When we went to the festival just after the Independence Day parade in Independence, we met a family who has a medically complex, medically expensive child who are anxious about having to navigate the bureaucracy of their insurance company and the precarious situation of our healthcare laws, whether those pre-existing conditions are going to be protected and whether there's going to be a cap on lifetime coverage. And so as president, I want to make sure that once and for all we decide that all pre-existing conditions will be covered. There will be no lifetime cap on coverage. That family and their child are going to be okay. Next step, we need to ensure that everyone who is without insurance today is able to enroll in Medicare tomorrow. Those who are insufficiently insured, meaning you cannot afford the copay or the rising cost of your premiums, you cannot bridge the deductible before you and the care that you need, you can enroll in Medicare as well. And then for the tens of millions of Americans who have employer-sponsored insurance, the members of unions who negotiated for health care plans that work for them and their families, they are able to keep them. So we get to universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care for everyone and preserve choice in the deal as well. It's the surest and fastest way to make sure that everyone is healthy enough to live to their full potential. Thank you for asking. Appreciate that. Got it. Hey there.
I'm really concerned.
Yeah, here.
I'll repeat the question for anyone who can't hear. Can you tap the mic, Connor? There you go.
I'm concerned about the split. No?
I'll repeat the question. Thanks, guys.
Okay, the division between the haves and the have-nots. And with that in mind, how are you going to pay for anything that you decide to do? Are you going to let that tax break for the extremely wealthy stand? I've read that when Eisenhower was president, I think there was something like a 70% tax rate on the extremely wealthy. And I just don't see things getting done if the people who are running for president are taking money from those extremely wealthy people. So I kind of got two questions or two comments in there about, are you taking money mostly from people who have less than $100 for you, and also, that was it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It is okay. Thank you for the question. Question about wealth and income inequality, and a question about how we got there in the first place. And you're speaking to the corruption that we have in our politics and in our government here today.
Everybody's bought off.
Everybody is bought and paid for. It's the only way that you explain, I don't know if we can get a little bit more volume in this, or also just, yeah. It's the only way that you can explain, at a time that we were $21 trillion in debt, that the president signed into law a $2 trillion tax cut that flowed to corporations and flowed to the very wealthiest in this country, at a time that corporations were sitting on record piles of cash and profits. Those corporations, through their lobbyists and through the political action committee checks that they cut to members of Congress, literally wrote the legislation that was passed that stood to benefit them. So in this campaign, we don't take a single dime from a single PAC or lobbyist or corporation or special interest. It is just you and my fellow Americans to whom I answer and to whom I'm accountable at the end of the day. Because it doesn't only explain those tax cuts, it explains the high cost of pharmaceutical medications. You and I as taxpayers paid for the research and development, the investment, the innovation, the clinical trials, only to have those medications sold back to us at the most expensive rates on the face of the planet today, because those pharmaceutical corporations paid for those protections in that impunity. So we need to make sure that we make policy for everyone, have an economy that includes everyone. It's not just good for our economy, it's essential for our democracy. Theodore Roosevelt said something to the effect of, if you want true political democracy, in the United States, you're going to have something approaching true economic democracy in the United States. If not every single one of us or every single one of our kids can see a future for ourselves in this country, then we will have no future as a democracy. So we absolutely have to get this right. What if we repealed the worst of the excesses of that Trump tax cut, ensure that corporations are paying their fair share, tax capital at the same rate that we tax ordinary income? To answer your question, we generate hundreds of billions of dollars that we can invest in healthcare, in education, in infrastructure. What if we ended these wars that we have been fighting without end all over the world that have added trillions of dollars to the national debt, invested the savings back home in veterans who bore the battle in the first place, invest those savings back here in this country that they have just come home to? These are great opportunities for us, but we are not going to realize them unless this democracy brings in every single person to the exclusion of all of those corporations. And that's precisely the way that we're running and precisely how we get these things done at the end of the day. Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate it.
All right, I see somebody over here. Here we go. I'm coming to you, ma'am, right here. There you go.
Yeah, I would like you to say a word more about the health care issue. I'm a senior who really can't afford, I got a prescription yesterday, and when I went to get it, it was $100, and I don't have that much flex.
What had it been running?
What?
What had been the cost of it before $100?
I have no idea. The man told me that my supplemental insurance was paying half of it, so obviously the cost was $200.
Right.
But I don't understand how we're supposed to make it
Yeah.
it's so people talk like Medicare covers everything, and it's not even close.
You're absolutely right. And when I ask people that question, how do you cover it if your prescription copay amounts to $10,000 a year? Folks tell me that they don't pay for it. They can't make it. They're rationing their medications. They're supposed to take 3 of those pills a day, and maybe they take 1, some days 2, just to see if they can stretch it out so that they can make ends meet in their household. This is what happens when we do not allow Medicare to bargain with the drug companies to bring down the cost of our medications. This is what happens when by law we don't allow you to buy your prescription medications from Canada or the European Union or other countries where they're sold far less expensively than they are here in the United States. In our administration, Medicare will use its leverage and its purchasing power to bring down the price of those medications. We will also use the investment that you and I make as taxpayers in the initial research and innovation and the clinical trials to make sure that those medications are affordable when they are then sold back to us. You will also be able to buy across international boundaries and across the Atlantic Ocean if you can find those medications for cheaper. And then, as we said earlier, universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care. The operative word for me is guaranteed. Having health insurance alone doesn't guarantee you anything if you cannot afford the copay. So I'm going to guarantee that you can afford those medications that improve your quality of life, or those medications for example, diabetics, insulin, that literally keep them alive in a country where right now folks are crowdfunding their insulin treatment 97 years after it was invented and sold to the Canadian government for $3 Canadian. Why are people making millions of dollars in profit off of selling insulin today, more than a century later? So yes, we're gonna guarantee your health care and your ability to be well enough to do whatever you're placed on this planet to do in the first place. Thanks for asking, appreciate it.
I'm from St. Charles, Illinois, and Hubbard, Iowa. We have 2 homes. And I've never followed the primaries as closely as I ever have been in my life. And I love your vision of America. I like what you did in Texas. My number 1 issue is healthcare. And I'm really so disgusted by this amoral, corrupt president. So I just want you to tell me in this country, my question is, how are you going to defeat Trump in 2020? How are we going to do it?
Yeah. So in February of this year, Donald Trump comes to our hometown of El Paso, Texas. He wants to use our beautiful border community as the backdrop for the case that he's going to make for a $30 billion, 2,000-mile wall that will do absolutely nothing to secure this country, that will not be built on the international boundary of the United States and Mexico, which is the center line of the Rio Grande River Channel, will cause you and I to take our fellow Americans' farms and ranches and homes through eminent domain to build a solution in search of a problem. And against the hatred and nativism and racism that he brought to our hometown, we got to participate in a march for truth and a movement of more than 10,000 people who met him not with hatred, not with intolerance, not really against him, but for the best traditions of the United States of America. We told our story from the U.S.-Mexico border. The place that he wants to make you afraid of is literally the place that Amy and I are raising those 3 kids that I just introduced you to. And I can talk about the power of immigration, that El Paso is one of the safest cities in the United States of America today, not despite, but because of the fact that we're a city of immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees. So on his own terms, in our hometown, we were able to meet that force of hatred with a force of love and compassion and strength and confidence and courage, which to me is the answer to the pettiness and the meanness and the division that we're seeing right now in our country. Furthermore, I'd tell you this, in what was thought to be a state too red to count, we visited every single one of those 254 counties in Texas on a bold, progressive message, writing nobody off and taking nobody for granted. At the end of the day, we won more votes than any Democrat has in the history of the state of Texas. We won independence for the first time in decades, brought 500,000 Republicans along with us as well, and saw young voter turnout spike 200% over the last midterm election. I'm confident that it's going to take that kind of movement, comprised of people across all differences, geographic, partisan, and otherwise, to defeat Donald Trump in 2020, and then, just as importantly, to bring this very divided country together again in 2021. So that's how we do it. I've seen us do it in El Paso and in Texas, and I want to do it here in Iowa and across the country as well, and I would love to have your help in order to be able to do this. Thanks for asking.
I don't believe in these polls. And I can tell you this, at least in St. Charles, Illinois, all my mom friends, I'm a mom of a 13-year-old and 19-year-old daughter who saw you in Grinnell College. She goes there.
I think this is going to be good, so say it
They're
into the
not-
microphone.
No, I'm just saying, I'm a mom of a 13-year-old in St. Charles, Illinois, and my daughter is a sophomore at Grinnell College who saw you. We encourage you to see you in person. So I saw you on video, on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I don't believe in these polls. And I can tell you, I talked to all these mom friends. No one in St. Charles, Illinois is talking about this immigration problem. They are not. They're talking about health care and college education that's unaffordable. Those 2 issues. Jobs for their husbands. I studied electrical engineer. I'm a stay-at-home mom. You know, the family unit has to be strong.
Absolutely.
And without health care, without education, they're stressing out the family unit. And I can just tell you, immigration, I don't see that anywhere in my mom friends group in St. Charles, Illinois. You know, so I'm just rooting for you. So
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for the comments. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Kano.
Hi, I just got back from touring the Normandy beaches, and
Oh,
it was
wow.
so inspiring to see America as a leader in this world, and I don't think that's true in 2019. So what are your thoughts and plans to kind of restore the U.S. as an international leader in diplomacy?
Yeah. Great question. And this is coming from the very large Hemkin contingent that is here. Thank you all for coming out. Yeah, you think about the fact that we just celebrated the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And, you know, I was talking about young men who left this community in 1861 to go fight for the Union, for the United States of America. You know, same thing in 1944. Many of them knowing that they would not come back, that they were literally going to sacrifice their lives for this country. And in the forge of that sacrifice came these very powerful alliances that have led to our opportunity to become the greatest, the most powerful, the wealthiest country on the face of the planet. In fact, the only time that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's Mutual Defense Clause was ever invoked was when we were attacked on 9/11 in 2001. And yet this president has turned his back on those alliances, on the world's great democracies, to embrace strong men and dictators and autocrats. It could be Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, who is bombing indiscriminately the people of Yemen, precipitating the greatest humanitarian crisis that part of the world has ever seen. It could be al-Sisi in Egypt. It could be Vladimir Putin in Russia, who attacked this democracy and who this president called after the Mueller report was released to describe that report as a hoax, giving him the green light to do the same to us and to other democracies around the world. So at this moment that there's an open question about whether the future of this world is democratic or autocratic, I want our administration to be able to answer this question affirmatively, that we believe in democracy here at home. We're going to remove barriers for people to vote. We're going to make sure that everyone can participate here. And we're going to get closer to our traditional alliances and friends and partners around the world. It's the only way that we meet the threat of Iran or North Korea or Russia or climate change or nuclear proliferation, or helping those kids out in those countries of Central America so that they never have to make the journey in the first place. So renewing our alliances and our partnerships and favoring those democracies over dictatorships, that's the way that we need to go going forward. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate
All right,
it.
straight back here.
Here we go.
10 years ago, I was working at Electrolux 20 miles away over in Webster City. As we're over 2,000 employees. I think there was at the peak about 2,500 employees from multiple counties all around. I was laid off from my job, my modestly paying job, making $35,000 to $36,000 a year. Certainly not getting wealthy. We were told that those jobs were going to leave. They were never going to be coming back. We had to go and train for other types of work. So I went back to college, worked my tail off, drove back over 100 miles a day to college, completed 2 STEM programs, and in 10 years, after completing my work, almost 10 years, I have not been able to get a decent paying job. And I know part of it is my age, but then STEM programs are hot. Why can't I get a job? And what will you do to help me get a job? I want to keep working. I want to earn a decent, honest wage.
Thank you for sharing your story and for asking a really important question. We've got to make sure that every part of America is competitive for investment. That means investing in infrastructure, from roads and bridges and water systems to broadband internet, so that the next generation of small businesses can start right here in this community or in my hometown of El Paso, Texas. We also have to make sure that your neighbors here in this community have the capital, the money necessary to be able to start small businesses. Right now, increasingly, that is not the case in America, as you have more and more corporate consolidation, corporations who ship more and more of those jobs overseas. So in our administration, we're going to double the amount of money that we bring to communities like this one that can be lent out to prospective business owners such as yourself, or perhaps other neighbors who will create the kind of jobs that we need to have here. We're going to make sure that the tax code no longer favors corporations, instead favors small businesses, and any kind of subsidy that any business gets for creating a job is tied to keeping that job right here in this community. That there is not discrimination based on gender or race or age in the workplace, so that everyone has a chance to contribute back to the success of this community, of this state, and of this country. Really make sure that this economy works for everyone. You put in the effort and the work to make sure that you improved yourself through higher education. We need to make sure that we put in the resources, the capital, and the investment to make sure that you can realize that in this or any community across this country. Thanks for asking the question.
Okay, on the other side, to your right.
Yep.
And I have time for 2 more, but we'll stay after and be able to answer some questions.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hey there.
I'm going to be a young voter. I'll be voting for the first time in the 2020 election. I have a question regarding public transportation, but also with a focus on climate change.
Yeah.
So statistics show that the average American who drove in 2018 spent roughly $3,400 on gasoline in the year. And it also shows that the average American consumed almost 1,200 gallons of gas in that year. And congestion increasing every year in America thanks to urbanization, and a lack of public transport in America. It takes hours to take a train the same distance that it would take 3 hours to take a car. I want to know why you think that government in America doesn't invest more in public transportation and getting cars off the road, because obviously it's terrible, our carbon emissions are super high, and what you would do to help public transportation in America, enacting high-speed rail lines or helping with metro areas, combining them to combine statistical areas, and how you can increase the efficiency of American travel.
Yeah. Great questions. So, when I was on the city council in El Paso, Texas, we had arguably the worst bus and transit system in the United States. You might be able to get on that bus, but there was no guarantee that that bus was going to get you to its destination. They were old, they were breaking down. The air conditioning in the middle of the Chihuahuan desert, where it can get to 110 degrees in June or July, was not working. We made significant investment in that transit system because we wanted to make sure that folks could get to school, could get to their job, could be with their families, especially in a community, the third poorest urban community in the United States of America, where many people had no choice but to ride the bus. We wanted to make sure that it was working for them, but we also wanted to be the mode of transportation of choice for people who had an alternative, had a car sitting at home. So through that investment, through the leadership of that entire city council, we were awarded the most improved transit agency across the United States of America within a few years. Massive capital investment matched by an investment from the federal government. Having learned from the local level just what a difference we can make at the federal level when we prioritize federal transit investment grants, I want to make sure that we lead on that in my administration. Our climate change plan calls for us to invest in rail, in transit, in alternative modes of transportation to ensure that people can live closer to where they work so they're not doing these 2-hour commutes. The gentleman mentioned a 100-mile commute to get to his college. Make sure that housing is affordable close to where you work or to where you go to school to meet the challenge not just of affordability, but also for the emissions that we're seeing that is cooking this planet faster than at any rate in the course of human history. If we're going to slow the warming down, ensure that it doesn't get past 2 degrees Celsius, we're going to have to do exactly what you just described and what is entailed in our climate change plan. In addition to everything else that we do in every other sector, it's critically important that transportation be a priority, and it is for me. So really appreciate you asking the question. Hope that we can be able to lead on that in the administration, and would love to have your help to be able to do that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, this is going to be our last question, but we do have time to stay after and say hi to folks.
Great.
Hi.
Hey, thanks, guys.
I am concerned about the children, and I want to know, and I know that when government invests in children, the community as a whole improves. And so my question to you is, what are you going to do in your administration to invest in children in the U.S.? Because there's so much disparity about access and mental health, to education, to childcare, that we really need some help with families.
Absolutely. Couple of thoughts. What if we made sure that childcare was affordable for every American, meaning that those children do better and so do their parents who are now freed to enter the workforce or complete their education? Part of that is going to entail paying those childcare workers a true living wage, which is not the case in so much of the country right now. Don't force them to work a second or a third job when they have the most important job right in front of them. Make sure that the tax code reflects this priority by giving working parents a break so that they can afford that. Double the size of the childcare block grants that we're sending out to the states so it's more affordable for every American. Then make sure that preschool is not an option or a luxury for some parents in some places, but is universal throughout the United States of America. So education begins at 3 or 4 years old instead of 4 or 5 years old. Let's make sure that we're recruiting teachers who look like the students in front of them. We see a disparity and inequity in education based on race right now. We know that a 4 or 5-year-old child in a kindergarten classroom is 5 times as likely to be disciplined or suspended if he or she is a child of color in this country right now. So that's something that we've got to get better. Pay public educators a true living wage. We know that in Iowa after 2017, when we no longer afforded those public educators the right to organize and use the leverage of what they provide in the classroom, that the greatest beneficiary was Minnesota, which saw a bumper crop of physics and calculus and kindergarten teachers, all trained by the taxpayers here in Iowa. So elevating the ability to organize for public sector workers is critically important as well. And then the questions come up several times about healthcare. Your child must be able to see a therapist or a primary care provider or a mental health care specialist if they're going to be at their best the next day in that classroom, if they're going to live to their full potential and promise over the course of their lives. All of this will require an investment. And I was asked earlier, how do you pay for that? The wealthiest country on the face of the planet has the resources. Through the tax code alone, we can make the investments in every single one of those programs that I just described, asking the very wealthiest in corporations to pay their fair share, because I agree with the premise. If those kids are doing better, we're doing better as a country. Thank you for asking the question. Appreciate it. Stolo? Williams, I just want to say thank you again for welcoming us out here today. Very grateful for the opportunity to hear your questions and respond to your ideas. Cynthia says we have a little bit of time for anybody who would like to say hello or take a picture. I'd love the chance to be able to thank you in person. So thank you all for having us out. Gracias. Les agradezco. Absolutely. Cynthia's the best photographer. Thank you so much. No, you look perfect.
All right.
Right on. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed your comments. Absolutely. Hey, Beto. Really, thank you so much. Thanks again for being here. Oh, we're grateful. Spread the word.
You know, I'm gonna have you pull. There you go. There you go. I don't see you much better now. There you go.
Right on. Thanks again. Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
Likewise. Thanks for making the trip to come down. Appreciate it.
This is my yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And will you, I won't. And will you thank him on my behalf?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
She can get your
Thank you.
information after.
Oh, right on. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Right on. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we'd love to have your help. Thank you so much.
They saw the documentary.
Oh, right on. Go on this side. Wasn't Cynthia great in it?
Yes.
It was.
Wonderful. There we go. Beth's always mad at me in that, right?
No.
They were joking.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the help.
Thank you so much. If you talk to Sandy in
Hey,
the white skirt, she'll
rolling.
get you a project.
Yeah, what's the 60. That was my seat. Yeah, good. Nice to meet you. Ford or Suburb? I was Ford.
I think so.
Very nice. There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying that. The encouragement. Hey, this is a great question. Wow. Yeah. I've only been asked transit questions a few times over thousands of questions. That was the best question I've heard. Yeah.
I also just want to compliment you on your campaign. I followed your campaign really closely in Texas.
Yeah.
My friend Avery actually sent it to me like a month into your campaign, and I followed it. And I respected so highly your the way you debated Texas without attacking him. But
I've been there.
you didn't use the same smear tactics, and that's something I hope to see.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice to hear. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Amazing. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
It's been El Paso.
Get out. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, hold on. Here we go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. 1, 2, 3. That's great. 1, 2, 3. Very nice. We
Right
got it.
on.
When I get an 8
Thank
by
you.
10, 8 by 10 of you and me over there, I'm going to have you sign.
I'm in. Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, didn't he? Yeah. Yeah, so good.
Does that work? Okay.
Oh, thank you for what you do. Appreciate that. Yeah.
There we go. All right, we got it.
Really
All right,
great.
come on up, guys. I'll
Keep
grab
up the
it.
public
So
service.
all of you can jump in.
Hey, how are you?
Come on up.
Hi there.
Go ahead.
Hey.
Sorry about that.
Hey, good to see you all. All right, you all ready? It's gonna be a great picture.
All right, everybody, look at me. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you scoot up. I can't see you. You're hidden back there. There you go. She's behind Beto's leg. There you go.
I'm gonna grab one too.
Over here.
Ready,
Look
1,
over here.
2,
Smile.
3.
Smile.
Yeah,
Oh,
got it.
hi, sweetie.
Right on.
Oh, you
Thank
look
you
so
all.
pretty.
Appreciate it.
So pretty.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for being here, Elizabeth. Yeah. No way. That was good. It worked on me.
Does that work?
All right. Thank you so much. Where in Colorado? Okay. We've been to Fort Collins, Denver, Boulder. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Keep it up. Yeah. Hi. Oh, thank you. Oh.
There you go. We'd love to get your information. Yeah, you're good.
I already got, I signed in the little thing, so I think.
Thank you.
I didn't save it.
Okay, I will save it. Thank you.
Hi.
I'm Kathy McGilvery and I'm from Dallas.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, Big D. Oh, yeah. So glad that you showed up. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, was that her phone?
No, it's
Oh, it's yours? Thank you, Kathy. Hey, thank you for being here. Yeah, appreciate it.
You ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, we got it.
Oh, thank you, man. Well, I look forward to supporting you in whatever you do, okay? Yeah. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I like that shirt. Thanks for wearing it.
It just came yesterday. My
Did it
mom
really?
was going to be so mad if it didn't come.
Right on.
Okay, I have a question for you. In
Please.
the fall, I'm going to be attending Drake, and I'll be studying law, politics, and society. So what's the advice you can give to a young person who's like starting to get like into politics?
So what you're doing right now,
Yeah.
I'm going to meetings like these. I got involved in politics at a fairly young age, volunteering on other campaigns, so knocking on doors, making phone calls. It brings you into how you organize and run something like this. So
And I think my parents have always done that, so that's been like instilled in me growing up
Good.
to be like, okay, like this is something you should pursue, like, you know what I mean?
and then studying all these policy questions that you care about, listening to what all the candidates say about it. I think all that stuff's important. But so glad that this is the
We need a real picture too.
Let's do it.
Hi, here we go. Good, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
What was your name again? Faith Pins. Do my last name as well? Faith Pins.
Coming out. Oh yeah.
We missed you when you were over.
Thank you so
I
much.
was gonna say we were there not too long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, come see your phone.
We will. We'll come back. And thank you all for taking the time to hang out with us today. So we got here 2 days ago and we're leaving tomorrow morning. But we'll come back. This is our 6th trip and we keep coming back. Every time it's better. So please help us spread the word.
You got the weather now. It's a little
Yeah,
hot, but
we saw there was a chance it was going to rain today, but we escaped it. Dodged it. All right, should we take a photo? Come on in.
I'm living in Ames.
All right, it's going to be a good one. Thanks again. Thank you.
He's in line. Still in line.
Whose camera's that? Do you know whose it is? Okay. Hi. ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien. ¿Cómo se llama ella? Me llamo Beto. Mucho gusto. No.
She's going to take it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Hi, how are you, man? Muy bien, ¿y usted? Gracias por venir y estar con nosotros.
Yeah, she works for you.
There you go. We got it.
She's gonna take it. I'm just
Gracias a usted y por favor compartirlo. Sí. Sí.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. That's what we talked. Yes, we talked about.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Right on. Let's talk to him.
Really, I try to change their minds all the time.
Yeah, we won't write anybody off. Thank you.
Rusty Graves.
Hi, Rusty. Good to see you,
Is
man.
the Rib Hut still open on Mesa
Yes,
Avenue?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Your classmate Kelly Neeson is my cousin.
Get out.
Yeah.
Right on. So
I
Matt
gotta send
Neeson
it.
and
Yeah. Danny and all
yeah,
that.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
great family. Yeah, super. They've been super good to us over the years.
Can't really believe there's an Irishman in El Paso. But I guess
Here we go. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Just one more. Here we go.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate
I'll
it.
tell her I met you.
Wonderful. Please
Yeah,
do.
true.
Yeah. Hey. Hi. How are you? Hi. Gracias. Gracias por venir. Gracias.
¿Lista para tomar una
¿Lista?
foto?
Vamos a tomar un foto.
Y aquí vas a ver a la
Hey.
cámara.
Good to see you, man.
All right, here we go. 1,
Hey.
2, 3. Very nice. All right.
I'm gonna get one over here too. It looks so good. 1, 2, 3. Got it.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye, mi mamá.
Adiós. Hace mucho calor.
Sí, mucho.
Hola, ¿cómo está? Muy bien, ¿y usted? Muy bien. Gracias por venir.
1, 2, 3.
Gracias. Gracias. Por favor, compartirlo. Sí, gracias. Sí. Thanks for the great question. Tell me your name. Ron. Yeah.
I know of a number of middle-aged men and women that went there, like they were holding 3 jobs for several years. Another guy, 4 years before he found a job, he actually lost welfare. And another guy, he lost his apartment, he was living in his pickup during the nice weather, and he had nobody to mention. People lost their houses.
And this is happening right now. This guy that you mentioned, he's living in his pickup.
Yeah, he first did get a $12 an hour job.
Yeah.
And then they laid him off.
Yeah. So what you just said is the answer to folks who say, well, the economy's doing so well and it's expanded, this many months in a row, but it's doing really well in places and for some people, and certainly for corporations, but for a lot of people it really is not. And you mentioned temp labor, having a $12 an hour job for a little bit of time, but with no benefits and no guarantee going forward. That's just not right. And so one of the things that we're talking about is making sure that there's greater corporate responsibility mandated by law, and then greater small business growth and small business development in the first place, because small businesses that start here are going to be loyal to the people who work for them in a way that corporations just are not. So really loved your question. Tell me some of the job.
Electrolux closed down plants in Quebec. They're closing down one in St. Cloud, Minnesota, and they closed down Detroit, and all those have at least 1,000 employees. Some of them went to the maquiladora. Now some of it came back.
In Juarez, right? In Mexico.
Yes. And then some of it came back to Memphis, Tennessee, when they got $30 million from taxpayers.
That's right. Yeah.
They're just milking everybody for what they can get.
We were in Lordstown, and taxpayers in Ohio paid $82 million for the expansion of that plant that is now closed down and has let everybody go who was in that plant. They weren't willing to transfer to other states or maybe even other countries. So what that says to me is that anytime you're providing any kind of public incentive, it has to be conditioned on the fair treatment of communities and people who make those companies successful in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Senators Grassley and Leahy proposed a law to end age discrimination.
Yeah.
Are you behind that?
That makes a ton of sense to me. Do you mind taking a note on that? I just want to look up that bill. Senators Grassley and Leahy have proposed a bill to end age discrimination. It was one of the things I talked about in response to your question. So I certainly support that. I want to just make sure that we read the bill to know what's in it. But absolutely, everybody should be given an opportunity to succeed, regardless of age.
Yeah. Well, I went back for agronomy. You know what agronomy is?
Absolutely. So
Plant and soil science.
that's right. You're going to make sure this state is successful in growing food for the world.
And having healthy soils and a healthy environment.
Absolutely. Healthy water.
Healthy water.
Yes.
I know we can fix the problems that we have in this state. We got to change our culture.
Absolutely.
And so we need people like you to come out and say that you support diversified family farm agriculture.
Absolutely. And so you heard me touch on a little bit about regenerative agriculture right now, making sure that you have more, crop rotation and cover crops that are planted, and paying farmers for the environmental services they want to provide. Right now, through the Farm Bill, we're really incentivizing them to plant every square inch, for soybeans and corn right now. That's right, right up to the water's edge, which is not good for the water. And then in terms of what we're doing to the soil, not having those rotations of small grains coming through. That's not good for the soil. You know this stuff better than I do. I just want to make sure that you're working with us to guide us on this farm policy. Absolutely. We want to have your help. Yeah.
Okay. I better let somebody else know. Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming out here. Appreciate it. Hi. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely, and you make it harder and harder for this country to come together because you've written people off, and they don't see a future for themselves. That's right. Bring everybody in. Yeah. Thanks for being here today.
I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. What's your friend's name?
Pickles.
Hi, Pickles. Hi. Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Independence Day. Molly, did you see Pickles?
Look at his tail.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Pickles. Oh my gosh. Getting a little bit of an ear rub here. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yes. Isn't that great? Hi, Pickles. Hi. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Pickles is terribly non-adversarial.
I can tell. Thank you for hosting us. This was so nice under this tree. Thank you so much, Jamie. Yeah. I would love it. Yes. Cynthia's the best photographer in the business.
Here we go. 1, 2. Grab one more just to make sure it came out. There you go.
Right on. Thanks again for doing this. Love what you had to say in your opening comments. Thank you. Yeah.
We'll be quick.
Hi. How are you? Jenny? Benton. Beto. Yeah.
I know.
Hey, do we know a Benton? Her cousin's Benton.
You know what? Can you guys take one step up?
Yep.
Some of you are in the shade over there. Oh, that's much better. There you go. This is our spot right here. There you
And
go.
Benton's
Thank you.
brother's name is Boom.
Boom.
Benton and Boom. Yeah. Yeah. Two, I thought those were Texas names, but apparently. And Beth. It's Benton, Boone, and Beth is the little sister. Yeah. Thank you all for coming out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate
Yeah, we
it.
thought we'd get a Hempkin family
Yes, this
photo.
is out. Where's my shirt?
I
It's at the car
Thanks for asking the question.
It's at the car museum. There's a car museum down the street.
Thank you. Yeah, so cool that you all were out here for this.
So I'm going to ask all of you to stand all the way up here because if not, you're half in the shade and half in the sun. There we go. Let's see.
Does that look good, Connell?
Good. Look for family right
Is it
there.
Hempkin good?
Go Hempkin.
Yeah.
All right.
Connell, will you get a picture with your phone? This is a special moment.
All right. Here we go.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
The Hempkin photo. All right. There we go.
Thank you so much.
Two blocks down.
Adios. Yeah. Thanks again. Likewise. Yeah.
You can stand like right here.
Yeah. We do our homeowners, but we're 25.
So that prevents us from being able to another, where's our student loan? $1,200 a month? Whoa, $1,200 a month towards savings. And every year I went to college, the price, I swear, doubled every year I went to college. And the government, I started nursing school because I paid the job I was in. Nursing school, when I went to pay my student loan out, they wanted to take me just like $17,000 more than what I needed. And so a lot of people are falling for this trap of having to take extra money that they don't need out. And my wife was people with disabilities, and she had a family. The program cost $4,000.
The program at DMAC cost $4,000 when they got there.
Why?
And he's living at
Because it's saying for living expense,
yeah.
but they don't have to be living at home.
And
Right.
they
So,
have no idea because they asked me, we can take my kid out. Well, you're about to. And I was like,
so
I didn't pay $1,000. I took a college though, and I United States. But we literally are putting off so much. Every year, the cost of tuition are going up, and we were one of the lucky ones. Amy's cost of living shot through the roof. My apartment when I first started renting was $500. When I stopped renting, it was $850. Cost of living just became unaffordable. We were almost ready to move and switch colleges. I also did go to college, private college my first year, but that was half the cost.
Yeah.
But is there something that can be done from a regulation standpoint? One, to prevent people from getting letters like what your student got that says it's $4,000, but you should take out $12,000 if it's free.
Right.
And two, is there something stopping the universities and colleges and incentives of keep jacking the price up?
Yeah. So in both questions, the answer is yes. For the federal government, which provides Pell Grants and federally backed student loans, you can make those conditional on the increase in inflation on tuition, room and board, and books. You can also, for those who have outstanding student loan debt, such as yourself, refinance that debt at the lowest possible interest rates. And then you mentioned nursing. If you were willing to dedicate some part of your
that's
future,
what I'm doing. Okay, I got paid for.
And did you get it through the public service?
I got it from Nurse Corps.
But you have to pay
Nurse
for
Corps.
school.
I have to pay for school up front, and then
Gotcha.
And then once I agree, I'll have to work for 3 years as a nurse for them. At hospital of their choice.
So our proposal says you would get that in real time. You wouldn't have to.
That would have been helpful.
Right?
Yeah, because I had to upfront $40,000 for nursing school.
Yeah.
And I already had $100,000.
Yeah.
For us, it was terrifying. Because what happens if something happens to me during nursing school?
Right.
And I work in social services, so I don't know.
So, and here's the thing: is we've asked you to take on debt so that you can take care of people in the community.
Right.
We should be helping you so that you can take care of people in the community. So, I think controlling the cost going in, which our proposal does, and then helping those who already have outstanding student loan debt, which our proposal does. Those are the two major thrusts of our higher education affordability.
I feel like that would be a huge boon to the economy because I have an economics degree.
Yeah.
That would be enormous. If people our age had an extra $12 a month to go around spending on stuff for one, cars, houses.
We only were able to afford a house with my dad.
Investing and matched every dollar.
Oh wow.
That was the only way to
Yeah. Otherwise, we would have been stuck renting, which was an extra $200 more than the mortgage.
Yeah. And you wouldn't build any equity. Right. Yeah. Which you obviously don't know. Right. Right. It should be independent of your fortune or your luck in terms of who you're born to or where you live. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you became president, which I think would be the greatest thing at this point, would you be able to do something to stop that bar adjusting on our screen and going from this is what you actually need to this is what you need now? Is that something that you would be willing to?
Yeah.
It's just the bank fee.
It's the banks.
Yeah.
Because I had to do that for Sally Mae this time. And it literally just took the bar. I put it where I wanted it and luckily I financed that around. Otherwise, I would have said, oh, they're saying I should be here. I should go with this.
Yeah.
What the threshold is saying.
Right. Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. So consumer protection,
Yes.
right, against predatory lending practices,
Yes.
whether it's in higher education, whether it is in home loans, whether it is payday loans that we're seeing throughout this country.
Horrible.
Yes.
Can you get rid of those?
Yes, let's do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I work in a very low income district. I work with high schoolers who are transitioning out of high school and want to spend. So my main job is to get them jobs.
What?
But
Oh, yeah.
like, there are so many of those places.
Only if it's
They're
good.
on every street.
They're on every street. And,
Oh, I'm sorry.
And like, I teach my kids, like, do not ever use them, like ever. And they'll even tell me, like, yeah, my parents used it one time, I'm still paying it off.
Oh yeah. It is a
Never
trap.
use it.
It is a trap. And then part of it gets back to some of the things we talked about today. You have to be making a living wage so that you're not forced to take a payday loan in the first place, which is what so many people are forced into doing right now. So it's all connected. Appreciate you being here and for the kind, encouraging words, and then for raising these issues.
My friend that's from Texas is very good.
Oh, right. Where does she live?
She lives outside of the office.
Oh, okay. We spent some time there.
You don't want to And then when I
Oh.
very
Are you entering law for this?
that wasn't even his intern.
Unfortunately, yeah, that is not surprising. But thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, we'll see you all. Yeah, of course. Hope to see you again. Go Hemkins.
Hi. So I just have a question about keeping accountability for people who are supposed to pay child support. Because I have we have 6 kids in our family, and my youngest brother isn't like any college. Like my second youngest sister aren't getting any like college funds because it lives like my mom's making money from child support when he's not. So
Yeah.
I guess the question is like,
Yeah.
what's the better route for that? Because he's I mean specifically for him, he's a over-the-road semi-truck driver, and so it's like the option is garnish his wages while he doesn't pay, or put him in jail because like he doesn't make anything.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, and I'm sure that